She hadn't meant to fall. Not from the stage. Not from grace. And certainly not into the lap of a stranger. The ballroom at the downtown Boston hotel glittered, with crystal chandeliers and polite applause. 500 executives in tailored suits sat at round tables dressed in ivory linen. A 30-foot screen behind the podium displayed her name in sharp, confident letters. Elena Whitmore, founder, visionary, CEO. At 39, she was the youngest woman to lead a Fortune 500 tech firm in the Northeast. Her company's cybersecurity software protected hospitals, airports, even parts of the U.S. power grid. Business magazines called her relentless. Investors called her brilliant. But no one in that room knew she hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night in months. The applause swelled as she stepped forward to accept the Humanitarian Leadership Award. The irony almost made her laugh. Humanitarian. Her heels clicked against polished wood. The lights were hot, blinding. She gripped the podium and began her speech. Success, she said, her voice steady, isn't about profit margins. It's about people. And then the room tilted. A wave of dizziness hit her, sudden and violent. Her vision blurred. The faces in the crowd melted into indistinct shapes. She tried to steady herself, but her heel caught the edge of the stage. Gasps rippled through the ballroom as Elena Whitmore, the unshakable CEO, disappeared from sight. She fell forward and landed squarely in someone's lap. The impact knocked the wind from both of them. For one suspended second, the room went silent. Elena blinked, dazed, staring into a pair of startled brown eyes. The man beneath her looked equally shocked. His suit jacket was slightly rumpled. His tie loosened, like he'd dressed in a hurry. There were faint shadows beneath his eyes, the kind that didn't come from late-night networking events, but from something deeper. "Are you okay?" he whispered urgently. His hands were steady on her shoulders. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Not as a CEO, not as a headline, not as a symbol, just as a person. Security rushed forward. Assistants panicked. Cameras flashed. "I'm fine," Elena said automatically, trying to stand. But her knees buckled again. The man tightened his hold, not possessive, just protective. "She's not fine," he said firmly. "She's exhausted." His tone wasn't accusatory. It was certain. And for the first time in a long time, Elena felt seen. Daniel Reyes hadn't even planned to attend the gala. As a mid-level systems analyst at Whitmore Technologies, he was 5 corporate rungs below the people who usually filled that ballroom. But his babysitter had canceled at the last minute, and the company had insisted on attendance for award nominees. So he'd brought his 6-year-old daughter, Sophia. She was seated beside him now, tiny legs swinging under the table, her dark curls bouncing as she craned her neck to see what had happened. "Daddy!" she whispered, eyes wide. The lady fell. "I see that, sweetheart." Elena hadn't noticed the child until then. As Daniel helped her sit upright, Sophia stood on her chair, peering at the powerful woman in her father's lap. "You look sad," Sophia said with the blunt honesty only children possess. The entire executive row froze. Daniel flushed. "Sophia." But Elena held up a weak hand. "No," she said softly. "It's okay." She looked at the little girl. When was the last time someone asked her that? Elena wondered. "You look sad, not tired, not stressed, not successful. Sad." "I'm just a little dizzy," Elena replied. Sophia tilted her head thoughtfully. Then she leaned forward and did something no PR strategist could have scripted. She placed her small hand over Elena's heart. "My teacher says when you feel wobbly, you should breathe slow. Like this." She inhaled dramatically, exhaled louder. The ballroom watched in stunned silence, as the most powerful woman in the room matched her, breathing to a first grader's rhythm. In, out, in, out. Elena's vision steadied, but something else cracked open inside her chest. Because no one had touched her like that, without agenda, without expectation, since her mother died 5 years earlier. An ambulance was called despite her protests. Daniel insisted on riding along. Not because he wanted proximity to power, but because something about the way her hand trembled unsettled him. Sophia held Elena's fingers the entire ride. At the hospital, the diagnosis was simple. Severe dehydration, exhaustion, and stress-induced vertigo. Your body shut you down, the ER doctor said gently. It had to. Elena stared at the ceiling. She had built an empire from nothing after her mother's small accounting firm collapsed during the 2008 recession. She'd promised herself she would never lose control again. Control meant safety. Control meant survival. But tonight, she'd lost control in front of everyone. And somehow, that terrified her less than going back to being alone in that penthouse apartment overlooking the Charles River. Daniel stood awkwardly near the doorway while Sophia colored in a hospital-provided activity book. "You don't have to stay," Elena said. Daniel shrugged. Single dad reflex. "We don't leave people alone in ER rooms." She studied him more carefully now. "Your wife?" she asked softly. "Cancer," he replied. No bitterness, just fact. 3 years ago. Elena swallowed. "I'm sorry." "Me too," he said. "But Sophia still laughs every day. So I figure I'm doing something right." Sophia looked up at that. "Daddy makes the best pancakes." Daniel grinned. "That's my main qualification in life." Elena surprised herself by laughing. It felt foreign, rusty. "When do you sleep?" she asked him. "Between soccer practice, homework, and trying to keep up with your company's 2 a.m. server updates." He smiled faintly. "Not much." She blinked. "You handle the overnight patches?" "Yeah, it's easier to work late once she's asleep." Elena stared at him. She had signed off on policies that praised dedicated availability. She'd rewarded employees who answered emails at midnight. And here was a man sacrificing rest not for ambition, but for survival. For love. 2 weeks later, Daniel was called to the executive floor. He assumed he was being reprimanded. Instead, he found Elena sitting at the head of the long glass conference table. No stage, no cameras, just her. "I reviewed the overnight workload logs," she began. "Do you know how many single parents we employ?" Daniel shook his head. 73, she said quietly. "And most of them are working after 9 p.m. He shifted uncomfortably. "It's part of the job." "Is it?" she asked. That question lingered. She'd spent years designing systems to protect institutions. She had neglected to protect her own people. "I built this company to create security," she continued. "But somewhere along the way, I confused endurance with excellence." Daniel didn't know what to say, so he told the truth. "You built something incredible," he said. "But even firewalls need maintenance. So do humans." Silence filled the room. Then Elena Whitmore did something no shareholder would have predicted. She listened. Within a month, Whitmore Technologies rolled out a sweeping policy shift: flexible hours, protected offline windows, on-site childcare subsidies, and mandatory executive wellness reviews. Investors grumbled. Employees cried. Productivity didn't drop. It rose. Because people who are cared for care back? The unexpected turn came in early spring. Elena visited the company's modest daycare facility one afternoon, reviewing the new expansion plans. She heard laughter from the playground. Sophia was teaching 2 other kids how to breathe like brave people. Elena watched from the fence. Daniel approached quietly beside her. "She still thinks you're wobbly sometimes," he said gently. Elena smiled. "She's not wrong." They stood in comfortable silence. "Why did you really stay that night?" she asked him. Daniel considered. "Because when you fell," he said slowly, "you didn't look powerful. You looked alone." The word settled deep. Elena had built walls so high no one could see her isolation. And yet, when she literally fell, it was into the lap of someone who understood loneliness better than she ever had. A single dad with pancake batter on his sleeves, and love etched into the lines. Around his eyes, Sophia ran toward them suddenly, breathless. "Miss Elena," she called. Elena crouched instinctively this time. Sophia wrapped her arms around her neck. "You don't look sad today," she announced. Elena's throat tightened. She looked at Daniel, then back at the little girl. "Can I tell you a secret?" Elena whispered. Sophia nodded solemnly. "That night," Elena said softly, "when you told me to breathe, you didn't just fix my dizziness." Sophia blinked. "You reminded me how." "How what?" "How to be human." Sophia considered this carefully. Then she leaned in close and whispered something so quiet only Elena could hear it. "It's okay to rest." 4 simple words, but they landed harder than any boardroom demand. Elena closed her eyes briefly. In a world that worships grind and glorifies burnout, a child had offered permission. Permission to pause. Permission to feel. Permission to live. When she stood, she didn't stand alone. Daniel's hand brushed hers, not accidental, not strategic. Just steady. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive in grand gestures or billion-dollar acquisitions. Sometimes it crashes into your life unexpectedly, knocks you off balance, and leaves you sitting in the lap of someone who understands that strength isn't about never falling. It's about allowing someone to catch you. And sometimes the quietest whisper can rebuild two hearts at once.